everyone, and welcome to my movie review of the 2007 science fiction thriller Sunshine. I enjoyed this movie a lot, even though it didn't do very well at the box office. It received generally positive reviews, and I thought it deserved them. It was a relatively unique and refreshing take on science fiction, and I really liked it. This review is going to be a little light on biology, because the movie is largely built around physics and religious commentary. But there's enough biology to talk about, it's just not that much. Anyway, the movie begins in the year 2057, with a sun that's weak and dying. It isn't giving the Earth much heat anymore, and the world seems to be covered in snow and ice. It's revealed that at some point in the recent past, a ship called Icarus I was sent to the sun with a giant nuclear bomb. Its mission? To reignite the sun and save the world. No pressure, right? Well, something went wrong and the mission failed. Presumably because they named it Icarus. Not having learned from that naming mistake, the people of Earth created another ship called the Icarus II, and they loaded up with the last of the fissile material on Earth. The Icarus II has a crew of 8, and in the final third of the movie, the survivors eventually all get chased down and killed one by one, just kind of like it was a slasher horror film. This unfortunate ending for the ship's crew happens because the Icarus II detects the Icarus I. It's parked in orbit around Mercury. The ship's physicist, who's a man named Kappa, played by Cillian Murphy, he suggests that they commandeer the Icarus I and use both bombs to help them complete the mission. He says 2 bombs are better than 1. The maneuver doesn't go as well as they plan, and the ship's heat shield gets misaligned, and the ship gets damaged. During the repair process, the ship gets damaged more, and the oxygen garden is destroyed. And to make matters even worse, Captain Kaneda, played by Hiroyuki Sanada, is vaporized after getting exposed to the sun. They eventually make it into the Icarus I, only to find the crew dead, blasted to death by exposure to the sun. Suddenly an explosion happens, and it damages some airlocks and it prevents an easy exit from the Icarus I. Some crew members die in the attempt to return to the Icarus II. One of them dies after missing the door when he tries to jump from one ship to the other, and this causes him to float away into space. This is the first clear biological concept the movie presents that I can really start to make comments on. The crew member absolutely would have died in space, as he was unprotected. But so was another crew member who survived the jump. So this got me wondering, how exactly would the human body react if exposed to the vacuum of space? The first thing you'd notice is an inability to breathe, because there's obviously no air in space. Your body tissues would consume the oxygen in your blood until there was none left, and in about 15 to 20 seconds, you'd pass out. This might make you think you'd want to take in a huge breath of air before exposure to vacuum, so you would have more oxygen in your blood and stay conscious longer. But that's a bad idea. The delta P, or the difference in pressure, would cause your lungs to burst and fill your veins with air bubbles, and bam, you're killed by a gas. The delta P, or the difference in pressure, would cause your lung full of air it would make your lungs burst, and that would fill your veins with air bubbles. And before you know it, bam, you're killed by a gas embolism. The pressure also messes with your skin. At vacuum pressure, liquid water boils away to vapor, which causes your saliva to boil off your tongue. But it also causes your cells to swell up. Your skin and muscles and stuff will swell as the water inside turns to gas, it turns to vapor. Your cells turn into trillions of little gas pockets instead of cytoplasm-filled membranes. If you don't hold your breath, you might survive without permanent injury for up to 2 minutes in the vacuum of space. But your cells swelling up, that happens within 10 seconds. And you passing out, 15 to 20 seconds if you're lucky. Contrary to common belief, you wouldn't freeze right away. Because there's no medium to take heat away, your heat stays mostly around your body. If anything, you'd begin to feel warm as heat built up but wasn't released. The same would happen to any carbon dioxide you exhaled. It would form a gas bubble, around your mouth, and that would just get bigger as you exhaled. It's the same principle for flames making a spherical shape in space. There's no gravity to distort them or pull them, and there's no medium to carry the air away or to push the heat around. So back on the Icarus II, the survivors find out that because the oxygen farm was destroyed, they barely have enough oxygen to get to the sun. Certainly not enough to make it back to Earth. The oxygen gardens were full of plants that literally turned the exhaled carbon dioxide of the crew back into oxygen. This is a neat concept that's been in science fiction for a long time. A spaceship is basically an enclosed environment moving through space. Because humans breathe the oxygen produced by plants on Earth, it reasons that plants would be kept on a spaceship for the same purpose when humans are out in space. Although plants don't breathe in and out as much as we do, certainly not when we're breathing hard because of physical activity. Our respiratory rate is much faster than a plant's. If this was the only way the crew had to recycle oxygen, there would need to be a huge number of plants in pretty much every room of the ship just to keep up with the rate of respiration of the crew. I mean, it's good that there's only 8 people, but still, it would take quite a lot of plants to supply the recycling capacity for 8 people to live sustainably. Alternatively, they could save some space by just having a few pools of cyanobacteria, which actually produce the bulk of the oxygen on Earth that we breathe. Anyways, the oxygen gardens are destroyed, and they're doomed to die in orbit around the sun. It's at this happy point in life that the crew also discovers that the captain of the Icarus I is still alive, and he's snuck aboard the Icarus II to cause mayhem and death. He's the guy who goes around and kills everyone, one by one. Somehow, perhaps by killing his crew early and rationing the food, the captain of the Icarus I was able to stay alive. It's unlikely, but maybe. His personal needs would have used a fraction of the resources of his ship, including oxygen, and it was shown that the oxygen garden on board the Icarus I had grown out of its container, the plants breaking out of their enclosures and creating like a mini jungle inside the room. I suppose it's feasible for someone to have lived like this across the 7 years since the Icarus I went missing, but it seems like it would be pretty difficult. And the captain of Icarus I, a man named Pinbacker, definitely shows signs of wear and tear. His body is blackened and twisted by burns from the sun, a sun that he looks at too often with too little protection. He's gone totally insane, and it's revealed that he probably went insane before his mission even failed. It's implied that he was the reason the first mission failed, because he had a religious revelation that the dying sun was an act of God, intended to kill off the human species and deliver them all to heaven. Basically, the captain of the Icarus I went insane with power and the exposure to forces much stronger than himself, and it seems to have broken him, or at least cracked him open and exposed some kind of maniacal fanatic. He killed his crew and parked the Icarus I in dead orbit around Mercury, and he kept the device that could save humanity near at hand, but he never used it. He deliberately chose to let the human species die, obsessed with this notion that he was the last man, the last human who was going to be alive, to exist, before the human species was snuffed out forever. And so Pinbacker is motivated to kill the crew of the Icarus II in order to prevent them from saving everyone. Pinbacker and Kappa play the two primary opposites in the final conflict, as the other characters are killed off one by one as Pinbacker rampages through the ship, or as they have to sacrifice themselves to save something or to fix something. He chases Kappa and Cassie, the ship's pilot, into the payload section of the ship, where the bomb is held. Kappa manages to escape Pinbacker, begin the initiation process, and he reignites the sun to save the Earth. And this makes for a bittersweet but ultimately happy ending. I really enjoyed the movie Sunshine, but I struggled over how to rate it. I wanted to give the movie a 90% or a 95% as I was watching it, but I was a little turned off by the switch from cerebral sci-fi to slasher horror in the later third of the film. I thought the antagonist Pinbacker was unrealistically crafty in his ability to get through the ship undetected, but I guess it wouldn't be much of an ending if they saw him on the security cameras and locked him in a hallway within 5 minutes of him getting on the Icarus II. That wouldn't have made for very good entertainment. But after reading the thematic justification for Pinbacker, I realized that his strange appearance and abilities are part of the theme of the film itself. The director explained that Pinbacker represented irrational religious fundamentalism, and his unexplainable danger is part of that representation. He is religious insanity injected into an otherwise streamlined exercise in applied science and humanist philosophy. His religious fundamentalism is the chaos that defiles and denigrates the careful plans of the scientists. I really appreciate that message, and it made me appreciate the movie a little more. I really kind of think that the whole movie, almost, is built around a philosophical or religious motive. The sun is analogous to God, and all the characters interact with it and receive from it what a god would give them. Pinbacker is a vicious fanatic, a tyrannical zealot who wants to force others to believe as he does. In the film, he believes God has chosen mankind to die, and he seeks to ensure that his species is driven to extinction with him as the last man standing. Searle has a deeply emotional but not religiously fanatical relationship with the sun, and although he doesn't coerce others into his worldview, he still views the sun through a lens of quasi-religious awe. Captain Kanata and Mace the Engineer are representations of a kind of utilitarian atheism. They're logical and deductive, and they make choices solely to perpetuate the mission. They don't show any emotional dependence on the sun like the other crew members, and they both die giving their lives to make sure the mission can succeed. The main character, Kappa, is agnostic, floating between these two ends of the spirituality spectrum, and his reward is to come face to face with the sun, or face to face with God, without getting burned up like Pinbacker does. There's definitely a theme of worthy and unworthy souls in the presence of the Creator kind of theme that's going on here. So I guess I give the plot of Sunshine a 90%, but I would give its representation of physics a 50%. The gravity on the ship is just there, inexplicably, with no real explanation or reason. The bomb wouldn't have more than a billionth of the force necessary to reignite the sun, and the sun isn't even expected to die out or fade away like that for billions of years. With that said, I give the film's depiction of biology a 95%, because nothing in the movie with regards to biology was really too unrealistic or impossible. The oxygen gardens are plausible. They should maybe be a bit bigger. The rudimentary holodeck is also a plausible resource for psychological health, and the presentation of emotional and petty conflict between the crew reflects a realness and the humanness of the characters when they're kept in this kind of enclosed captivity for long periods of time, and social pressure kind of builds up. Pinbacker could have feasibly survived alone for 7 years, which would also explain his insanity. The reason I take 5% away from the biology rating is because I don't see how Pinbacker could have survived the journey into the Icarus II, when the only available doors were busted up and there weren't any spacesuits available. He would have had to jump or climb in the vacuum of space, unprotected, without the help of anyone or without anyone noticing. Despite this small plot hole, I wasn't detracted from the movie as a whole. The movie as a whole, I thoroughly enjoyed.